Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere soft and far away. A quiet attic in old Addis Ababa, where a single candle flickers over parchment and the rain hums against the roof like a lullaby. You probably won't survive this one, at least not awake. Before we get comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and post your local time and where you're listening from. I love seeing that quiet constellation of sleepy people all over the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's evening, and you're sitting cross-legged on a woven mat that's just a little frayed around the edges. The air smells faintly of paper dust and rain-damp wood. There's a dented brass compass beside you, its lid clicking softly every time the wind moves through the slats of the window. The flame of your candle dances, illuminating an unfinished map that sprawls across the table, rivers curling like sleeping cats, mountain ranges like folded linen. You've been here for hours, tracing lines that no one has yet named. Sometimes. You hum to keep your hands steady, a habit your mentor said makes the rivers flow straighter. Below the attic, the street vendors are packing away baskets of roasted corn and bright fabrics. A stray dog shakes the rain from its coat and trots under the eaves. Every sound, every scent, feels part of the same patient rhythm. You dip your quill into the ink again and breathe in the faint iron smell of it. You're 17, though your fingers look older, darkened by charcoal and the soft acid of ink. You've been apprenticed to Master Tesfaye for 2 years now. Long enough to learn that no map ever tells the truth completely. He says maps remember people, not places. And he says it so often it's practically your second heartbeat. You repeat it now, whispering it into the dim attic like a prayer. The parchment before you is meant to show the Central Highlands, the rivers that braid through them, and the tiny market towns where traders stop for coffee and gossip. But you're drawing more than that. You're sketching memories. The stream you bathed in as a child. The small outcropping of red rock where you once buried a bird that didn't survive a storm. You even mark your own village as a tiny dot, though the last census official didn't think it worth naming. We'll name it ourselves, you mumble, adding a circle around it. Someone has to remember. A sudden clap of thunder shakes the tin roof. The candle shivers. A drop of wax slides down, catching on the rim of your wooden holder. The sound of rain grows louder, insistent, like drumming fingers. It's almost soothing until the wind slaps the shutters open and blows a spray of cool rain across your work. You leap up, laugh quietly, and wrestle them shut again. You can't have the world yet, you tell the storm. I'm still drawing it. The attic smells of wet dust now. You take a cloth and blot the map, watching how the ink feathers slightly at the edges, like a watercolor painting of itself. There's beauty in that imperfection, you think. Maybe the land itself is never still long enough to be perfectly drawn. You glance toward the compass, the brass lid half open, and imagine the tiny magnet inside trembling northward, faithful even in chaos. Later, you hear your mentor below, muttering over ledgers. He always pretends not to stay late, yet somehow his candle burns longer than yours. He keeps his maps locked in a chest, maps of conquests, old routes of salt and gold. Some say he once charted the emperor's hunting grounds and got paid in. Ivory tusks. You don't quite believe that, but it's a good story. And in this city, good stories are the closest thing to currency. You settle again, drawing the faint outlines of Lake Tana. The rain has softened to a whisper now. You imagine each droplet as a cartographic mark. The heavens drawing their own geography on the city's rooftops. You think of your mother, who still doesn't quite understand what you do. When you visited last month, she asked, "How can you draw a world you haven't seen?" You answered, "I'm not drawing the world, Mama. I'm drawing how it feels." To stand in it? Sometimes you suspect that's all a map really is. A memory flattened into symbols, a feeling disguised as fact. And yet, it matters. When traders unfold one of your maps, they'll find paths that weren't there before. A farmer might follow your dotted line to a new market. A soldier might march along your shaded ridge. A child might trace your rivers, with a finger and dream of following them to the sea. You wonder if any of them will sense the quiet heartbeat of this attic behind each stroke. A rat scurries somewhere in the beams. You toss it a crumb of bread because, honestly, it's been your only audience tonight. You smile at the thought that centuries later, someone might find its tiny teeth marks on the corner of your map and wonder if they were part of some forgotten symbol. Future historians will be very confused. You murmur. You stretch. Your back popping softly. Outside, the rain lightens. The candle's flame dips, then straightens. You pause to listen to the drip of water from the roof, the low hum of the city settling into sleep. Somewhere, a lullaby drifts from a window, a woman's voice rounding each note like she's soothing the whole night to rest. You add the final line to the map's border and sign your initials in the corner, small enough to hide from anyone who might think you too proud that the attic grows warmer now that the storm has passed. The candle sputters but holds steady. You place the dented compass on the map's edge, just where a new road might begin. It's not perfectly aligned north, but it feels right. A secret mark that will remind you later of this night, this rain, this fragile beginning. Before you crawl under your thin blanket, you glance once more at your map. It's not finished. Not even close, but it's alive. You can feel it. The rivers seem to shimmer faintly, the mountains breathing with each flicker of light. Maybe you've drawn something true after all, not the shape of the world, but the feeling of belonging to it. You whisper goodnight to the compass. Tomorrow, you'll bring the map downstairs for Tesfaye to inspect, and he'll probably sigh, point out 10 errors, and tell you to start again. But for tonight, you let yourself believe the world, or at least a tiny part of it, has been redrawn under your own hands. Outside, the city sleeps beneath a blanket of rain, every rooftop glistening like ink. You close your eyes to the rhythm of it, hearing not weather, but the soft applause of the world saying, quietly, keep going. You're awake before the first light cracks the sky, the faint scent of coffee drifting up from the kitchen below, where Tesfaye is already at work. The map you finished last night sits on the desk, its edges a little curled from the damp, but it feels right in your hands. You trace the river bend you drew over and over, watching how the ink catches in the light, like the curve of a memory. The scent of coffee is stronger now, filling the small space around you, and you feel a tug in your chest, a familiar pull to the place where time is marked by the slow ritual of brewing, sipping, and talking. Tesfaye's mornings always begin with coffee. It's the same in the mornings and the same in the evenings. The beans are roasted dark and ground by hand, the air thick with their scent. You like to imagine that the land itself is brewed into the pot, as if every grain of coffee carries a secret, and only Tesfaye knows which one to listen to. You stand up, stretching your arms toward the low ceiling of the attic. The warmth from your blanket is already slipping away, but your fingers still feel the coolness of the parchment. You carefully fold it, setting it aside. This morning feels different, a soft sense of anticipation lingering like the last threads of a dream. Maybe it's because, today will be the first time you present your map to Tesfaye, your mentor is a man of routine, a quiet legend in the city's cartographic circles. He's had apprentices come and go, but none have lasted long. You've heard the rumors that he's harsh, that his standards are impossible, that he refuses to teach anyone who doesn't show a certain fire. But he's never been anything but patient with you. He never raises his voice. In fact, Tesfaye's most famous quirk is that he never really says anything outright. He's the kind of man who prefers to let you come to conclusions on your own, which you suppose is why you've stayed with him longer than any of the others downstairs. You hear him moving around, the sharp scent of coffee growing stronger, the sound of water being poured into a kettle. It's the kind of morning ritual that fills the whole house, a routine both comforting and exacting. And so you gather your things, the map, a piece of cloth to wipe off your hands, a few scraps of bread, and head down to meet him. When you enter the small room, Tesfaye doesn't look up immediately. He's at the stove, stirring a pot of thick coffee, the steam curling up and disappearing into the dim morning light. There's something meditative about the way he works. Like, everything he does is a part of a greater, slower order. He sets the kettle down with a soft clink and motions for you to sit across from him at the small table. You place your map in front of him, folding the corners carefully so that they don't wrinkle. He finally glances at it, but not in the way you expect. It's more of a sidelong look, like he's trying to decide whether or not the map has arrived at its own destination yet. Your rivers are too wide, he says quietly as he picks up a brush to clean the edges of his coffee cup. But it's not the width that matters. It's the feeling. He pauses, then looks at you with that steady gaze, the one that always makes you feel like he's measuring you, not just your work. Your map is too alive. You blink, confused. Alive? I thought it was supposed to be exact. Exact is easy. Alive is harder, he says, pushing the map gently toward you. It's not the land that's hard to capture. It's how the land is remembered. His words settle over you, slow as the brew in his cup. You look at the map again, really look at it, and you realize something important. The rivers are not just lines of water, but pathways of memory. They have a texture, an echo of every person who's walked beside them, every story that's been told by their banks. The way people remember their world changes it. Tisfay continues, watching your expression carefully. We don't draw the world as it is, we draw it as it feels. And you ... you've captured that. Just a little too much, maybe. But it's a good mistake. You let out a soft breath, both relieved and slightly more puzzled than before. It's the kind of lesson that will take years to fully absorb. Tisfay's quiet approval is like a gift, wrapped in words you'll need to unfold again and again, as you sit there. His hands moving with the practiced elegance of someone who has seen more mornings than he can count. The scent of coffee shifts in the air, mixing with the hum of the city outside. Addis Ababa is waking up, 1,000 different lives stretching and yawning into the day. The air outside is still cool from the early rain, and in this small room, the world feels contained. The slow hum of history already alive in the corners of your map. In the sharp, comforting tang of coffee, and in the quiet voice of your mentor. You should go see the coffee merchants in the market today. Tisfay says suddenly, pulling you out of your thoughts. I've heard something curious. A new map is being traded. One that's supposed to show all the forgotten rivers. Ethiopia. His words hang in the air, sharp and clear, and you feel a sudden flicker of excitement. Forgotten rivers? What could that mean? The idea of tracing a path that doesn't exist on anyone else's map is both thrilling and terrifying. It's an adventure that hasn't been written yet, but one that already feels destined to unfold in the space between the ink on your parchment and the ground. Beneath your feet, the compass on the table catches your eye again. You look at Tisfay, but he's already gone back to his coffee, his back turned in quiet contemplation. For a moment, you wonder if he's waiting for you to discover something new, something beyond the lines and borders of your current world. Maybe that's what he means by alive. The world isn't just drawn, it's discovered. And now, it's calling you to discover it anew. You gather your things, feeling the weight of the map in your hands, and head out into the cool morning air. The city smells of wet stone and fresh bread, and the sound of distant voices reaches you, muffled by the rhythm of your footsteps. There's a sense of purpose building in your chest, like the beginnings of a journey. Whatever this new map might be, it will be your own dot as you step into the street. The sound of life grows. Louder, more vibrant. The world outside is awake now, with all its stories unfolding like pages in an ancient book. The marketplace is just beginning to stir when you arrive. Still sleepy-eyed, the air cool and fresh after last night's rain. The cobblestone streets gleam, and you can smell the damp earth mingling with the sharp fragrance of spices. The hum of vendors setting up their stalls mixes with the early morning chatter, and a clink of metal against wood as wooden crates are lifted and carried. There's a soft bustle in the air, like the whole market is waking up slowly, stretching toward the first burst of sunlight. You're used to the marketplace by now, though it never quite loses its chaotic charm. The scent of roasted nuts, the flicker of colorful textiles, The cries of merchants haggling with buyers. It's a world in constant motion, shifting like the land itself. But today, your feet take you past the familiar vendors, past the figs and peppers, to a small, dusty stall at the far corner. The old man running it is hunched over a map spread out on the counter, his fingers tracing the ink like he's reading a secret. He doesn't notice you at first, his brow furrowed in concentration, so you take a moment to study him. His hands are thin and veined, the skin wrinkled from decades of work. He's not from Addis Ababa. You can tell by the way his eyes squint at the map as if he's trying to decode it, not just read it. The lines on the page are different from anything you've seen before. Unfamiliar rivers, forgotten villages, and an almost surreal curve to the borders. Like the land is holding its breath. It's the map you've been hearing about. The old man finally looks up, his eyes sharp despite his age. He seems to appraise you with a gaze that feels oddly familiar. He glances down at the map and then back at you, sizing you up as though you were a puzzle. His voice comes in a low rasp, thick, with the remnants of a distant accent. Are you a cartographer? He asks, the question oddly serious for such a casual setting. You nod, even though your hands are still trembling slightly from the excitement. I am, you reply, unsure of what else to say. There's something about his presence, something ancient, almost timeless, that makes your own words feel unimportant. He nods back, slow and deliberate. Then, as though deciding you are worth the effort, he taps the map with a bony finger. This is a map of rivers, he says, though it's not quite a statement, more a reminder of something you already know. But these rivers don't exist anymore, at least not in the way people think. You lean in closer, studying the map more intently. The rivers, like threads of forgotten memory, snake through places you've never heard of. They twist and turn with strange, unfamiliar names places. That shouldn't be on any official cartography. Your heart skips a beat. Could this be some ancient map of Ethiopia? One that even Tesfaye hasn't seen? Where did you find this? You ask, trying to keep your voice steady. The old man's lips twitch in the faintest of smiles. I didn't find it, he says cryptically, folding the map up and tucking it into his robes. It found me. You're not sure what to make of that, but you nod anyway. The pieces of the conversation floating through your mind like water seeking a path. The old man watches you for a moment longer, his eyes piercing. Then, as if deciding something in his own mind, he slides the map back across the counter to you. Take it, he says. There's more to this story than you realize, but only if you're willing to look. You take the map, careful not to crease it, feeling the weight of it as though it's carrying a history older than the city itself. The corners are frayed and the edges of the rivers are faded. It smells faintly of dust, of old paper and time. It feels fragile, as though it might crumble at any moment. Why? You ask, the question slipping out before you can think better. Of it, because it will teach you something about your own maps, the man replies, his voice softer now. More like a whisper. It will show you what happens when people forget the land. You feel the answer settle over you, heavy but strangely comforting. You thank him quietly, tucking the map under your arm as you turn to leave. The market seemed to hold its breath. As you step away, the world momentarily silent as you take the first step toward something unknown. But as you walk away, a sense of uncertainty creeps over you. There's something about the map, something that feels both wrong and right at the same time. It promises a secret that you don't fully understand yet. A story of rivers that may not exist in the world, but clearly exist in someone's. Memory. It's as if the map itself is reaching out to you, asking you to uncover its story. To fill in the gaps it leaves behind, you look up at the sky, which is starting to lighten as the sun peeks over the horizon, casting a soft, golden glow. On the market, your heart beats a little faster now, as if the world is calling you to chase something, not just a map, but a story. One that could reshape everything you've ever known about your land, about cartography, and about what is truly remembered. You pause for a moment, standing still in the center of the bustling market, watching the life of Addis Ababa continue around you. Somewhere the vendors are shouting, the sellers are haggling, and the distant sound of drums beats the rhythm of the city's pulse. But now it all feels just a little quieter, as if the map in your arms has unlocked a new layer of this world. One you hadn't noticed until now. The old man's words echo in your mind. It will show you what happens when people forget the land, and you realize for the first time that your journey as a cartographer is no longer about drawing the world as you see it. It's about rediscovering the parts of it that others have forgotten. You tuck the map securely under your arm and start walking back toward the edge of the market. Your step's purposeful. The world hasn't changed. Not yet, but you know it will. It's a quiet promise, one made between the map and you, one written in ink and memory. The palace sits on the hill above Addis Ababa like a thought someone forgot to finish, half cloud, half stone. Its tall windows catch the early light, and the golden spire glints faintly, like it's trying to summon the sun. You've never been this close before. The guards at the gate are still yawning into their spears, the smell of last night's fires lingering in the air. And you can't help feeling that you've wandered into a story that wasn't meant for. You doubt the letter from Tesfaye sits folded in your pocket. You can still hear him saying it that morning, quietly, without much ceremony. The Emperor wants a map, he'd said. He wants it soon. And I told him you'd help. You almost dropped your ink brush then. Me? Why me? He just shrugged, stirring his tea with that small wooden spoon he always carried. Because I'm tired of being blamed when the borders move, he said. And because you still draw with curiosity. It's rare, that kind of mistake. So now here you are, standing outside the Emperor's palace with a folded map under your arm and a heart beating faster than any compass needle. The rain from last night has turned the garden paths to soft mud. You step carefully, feeling the earth shift beneath your sandals, smelling the faint sweetness of the wet grass. A court official leads you through long corridors where your footsteps echo off marble floors. The sound seems to multiply, like you've brought an army of ghosts with you. The audience hall is enormous. Sunlight spills through the high windows, hitting mosaics that shimmer like trapped light. You can smell beeswax and incense, the kind used in churches and old homes, sacred and domestic at once. At the far end, the Emperor sits behind a table piled with rolled-up documents and red wax seals. He looks smaller than you expected, almost weary, but when his eyes lift to yours, you understand immediately why people call him a storm disguised as a man. Come closer, he says. His voice is smooth, but there's something sharp underneath. Like the edge of a blade, you bow, clutching the map a little too tightly. He gestures for you to spread it out on the table. The parchment unfurls slowly, the lines catching the sunlight. He studies it in silence for a long while. The hall is so still you can hear the candle wax dripping. When he finally speaks, his words are soft but heavy. This border here, he says, tracing a finger along the river's curve. It cuts through our own people. Move it north. You swallow, unsure if you should speak. But, Your Majesty, the river itself is the border. To move it, he looks up and you stop. The Emperor doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. The silence between his words does the work for him. The map, he says, shows what ought to be, not what is. You will remember that. You nod, heart pounding. You feel the tension between your ink and his authority, between the truth you've seen with your own eyes and the truth he wants to exist. It's a strange feeling, realizing that the map you make will decide which people belong to which nation, whose land becomes ours and whose becomes theirs. He notices your hesitation and, to your surprise, smiles. You think I'm asking you to lie, he says, leaning back, but I am asking you to imagine. Empires are drawn in imagination first, the rest follows later. You don't know whether that's wisdom or warning. He stands, and the light catches the gold thread on his robe. For a moment, you see the fatigue in his face, the burden of keeping an empire together while strangers carve up the continent beyond his borders. One day, he says, almost to himself, Europe will draw maps of Africa the way a butcher divides a carcass. At least ours should be beautiful before they ruin it. You're not sure what to say. You only nod again and carefully roll up. You're parchment. As you do, the emperor's assistant hands you something, a seal of gold, etched with the royal crest. So they know, the assistant says, that this work has his majesty's blessing. You feel the weight of it in your palm, heavy and warm. It smells faintly of beeswax and metal. You slip it into your satchel, right beside the old brass compass. The two objects clink softly together, like they're already conspiring about. Your future dot, as you leave the palace, you glance back once more. The emperor is standing near the window now, looking out at the hills beyond the city, his silhouette outlined in light. You wonder what he sees, the land as it is, or as he wishes it to be. Maybe that's what power does. It teaches you to believe your imagination more than your eyes. Outside, the wind has picked up again, carrying the scent of wet soil and jasmine from the gardens. You breathe it in, trying to steady yourself. You're not sure whether to feel proud or guilty. You've been given the greatest honor a young mapmaker could hope for, and yet you can't shake the feeling that something invisible just shifted inside you. A small line redrawn in your own heart dot as you walk down the hill toward the city. You keep glancing at your satchel, hearing the soft jingle of metal against brass. The compass points north, steady as always. But for the first time, you realize north isn't just a direction, it's a decision. And the next map you draw might change more than borders. Back at Tesfaye's shop, the candlelight glows warm against the paper. You set down your tools, spread a new sheet of parchment, and dip your quill into the ink that still smells faintly of coffee. The emperor's words echo in your mind. The map shows what ought to be. You hesitate before drawing the first line, your hand trembling slightly. Then you whisper to yourself, let's see what the world thinks it ought to be tonight. The ink touches the parchment. The world begins again. The parchment arrives at your door wrapped in oilcloth, sealed with an unfamiliar wax mark that smells faintly of sea salt. You break it open and unfold the contents carefully on your work table. The texture feels wrong, not like the usual. Thick, fibrous Ethiopian parchment made from goat hide, but something thinner, smoother, unnervingly perfect. Imported, you realize, Italian. The smell tells you that much. Faintly metallic. Like wet rope left too long on a ship's deck, Tisve stands beside you, holding a mug of steaming coffee, watching without saying a word. You can tell he doesn't like the new material either. The old parchment, your kind, breathes with the hand that touches it. This one feels lifeless, sterile, yet the surface gleams like the surface of a calm sea, tempting you to begin. It's strange, you say, running your fingertips along the edge. It feels like it wants to erase whatever you put on it. Tisfay chuckles softly. That's Europe for you, he murmurs. They like things clean, even history. You grin at his dry humor, though there's a weight behind his words. The letter that came with the parchment sits open beside you, written in crisp Italian. It's from a trader who owes Tisfay a favor, offering supplies befitting an imperial commission. Beneath the polite tone is something else, the implication that these new materials are the future, that the old ways will soon fade like ink in the rain. Tisfay leans against the table, studying your face. Use it, he says finally. Learn what it tells you, but don't forget what it hides. You nod, even though you don't yet understand. When he leaves, the workshop grows quiet except for the faint rustle of paper. You light a candle and hold it close to the surface, watching how the flame's reflection dances across it. It's almost mirror-like, catching glimmers of your own face, your tired eyes, the small smudge of ink on your cheek, the furrow of concentration that's become permanent these days. You dip your quill in the pot of black ink, the one mixed with soot, honey, and a trace of coffee husk. The recipe Tesfaye swears keeps your lines from cracking in the dry season. The scent rises instantly, sweet, bitter, earthy. It fills the room, grounding you. You breathe it in, remembering mornings spent grinding beans with your mentor, laughing when he scolded you for tasting the mixture. It's for maps, not mouths. You touch the quill to the parchment, and for a moment, nothing happens. The ink beads up on the surface like rain on glass. You frown, pressing harder, but the line still refuses to settle. The material resists you. Finally, after a few tries, the ink begins to absorb, slowly, grudgingly, leaving behind a sheen like polished obsidian. You draw the first line, the southern border of the empire. It's smoother than usual, almost unnaturally straight, as if the parchment itself is guiding your hand. The sensation is disquieting, like being led by a ghost who knows your destination before you do. You whisper under your breath, "This isn't how maps should feel." Halfway through, you pause to stretch your fingers, which are beginning to ache. The rain outside has stopped, leaving the air heavy with petrichor. Somewhere down the street, children are laughing, their voices carrying faintly through the open window. You imagine them jumping into puddles, their feet splashing in rhythm with your heartbeat. You wonder if they'll ever see the maps you make, if they'll even care where one kingdom ends and another begins. You glance at the Emperor's golden seal resting beside the compass. Its weight is both reassuring and oppressive. You touch it lightly, tracing the embossed lion with your thumb. Then, without fully deciding why, you press the seal against the corner of the new map. The wax leaves a faint circle of gold, shining softly under the candlelight. Something about that mark feels irreversible. Later, as twilight seeps through the shutters, you hear footsteps behind you. 'Tis Faye again, though quieter this time. He peers at your work for a long moment, his eyes unreadable. "So smooth," he murmurs. "It's beautiful." Then, after a pause, "Too beautiful. Be careful with that." You tilt your head. Careful? Why? He looks out the window instead of answering. The evening breeze catches the curtains, and you catch the faintest trace of salt again, maybe from the parchment, maybe from the memory of distant seas. When the surface is perfect, Tisfei says softly, the mistakes become invisible. You sit with that sentence long after he leaves. The words stick in your mind like burrs. You run your fingers over the parchment once more. It's cool to the touch, impossibly smooth, reflecting your candle's light and rippling gold. You can almost see your reflection in it, faint and warped, a stranger's face. You think about the traders who carried this paper across the red. See their ships creaking under the weight of goods and promises. You picture the men unloading crates in Masawa, their hands dusty with salt, their voices mixing in languages you can't name. Maybe one of them held this very sheet once, rolling it into a bundle, never knowing it would end up here, in your quiet little workshop, carrying the weight of an empire's story. The thought makes you dizzy. You push the chair back and step outside for air. The street smells of coffee husks, burning in tiny braziers, and the faint sweetness of roasting corn. The stars are beginning to appear above the city, shy and scattered. You tilt your head up, wondering how they'd look on parchment this fine. Maybe the ink would slide right off them too. When you return to your desk, you notice something odd. The faint shimmer of salt crystals along the edge of the parchment, glinting where the candlelight hits them. You brush your fingers across the surface, and the salt catches the light like a constellation. You smile faintly, realizing the sea has left its signature, even here, hundreds of miles inland. Maps remember people, Tisfei always says, but sometimes the paper remembers too. You blow out the candle, and the room plunges into soft darkness. The scent of ink and salt lingers as you close your eyes. Outside, the city exhales. Inside, the sea waits quietly beneath your fingertips.